Hi, and welcome to another Tech Talk Travel video. We're sitting here today with Michael Heinze, the Chief Architect from Shiji Group, at the HSMA E-Day here in Munich, and it's a beautiful sunny day. Michael, how are you? It's great to have you here.
I'm doing fine, thanks. I'm doing very fine because this is my first kind of conference stuff since COVID.
Really?
So, yes, I'm excited to be here again and to get out again and to meet people, interact with people, talk with you.
Yeah.
So I take it easy today.
That's good. That's good.
But quite excited.
Very good. Well, let's get into it. We have only a short amount of time, and we wanted to take the opportunity to sit down with you and just have a bit of a chat and have a couple of questions. The first one being, you've been in this industry now for quite some time. You've made a lot of, I think, progressive steps towards contributing to the industry overall as well when it comes to development of products and platforms. So I'd like to maybe just ask you, and one of the things that we were just talking about offline before we started was that you told me that you were coding since you were a boy, and that your first PMS you coded when you were 13 years old.
That's right.
Very impressive, I have to say. I had no idea that you had that type of talent. So why don't you talk to us a little bit about your background,
sure,
how you got into where you are now, and what was the progression for Michael Heinze when life was starting and your whole career journey?
Okay. How much time do we have? This could easily take 3 hours.
Well, talk and we'll cut what we need to cut.
Okay, fine. Well, I'm a typical Austrian hotelier child. My parents had a hotel in Austria, in Kaprun, you know, with the glacier. And I was literally born into the hotel, living, you know, in the hotel for the first 18 years of my life. So from 6, 7 years on, I was tasked to do front desk check-ins and everything, and you just did it because it was a family hotel. Starting at the age 10, I got interested in computers, like many children do. And, you know, playing games at first and everything, but then I got curious, how do you work with them? How do you program them? And then, born out of need, because my father always made me every 3 days manually check all the guest records that we had in paper. Michael, look for all the guests that have birthday in about 10 days, because we want to write a birthday letter. So it was my job every day at the evening, every second day, to look through those paper files and look at one by one who got birthday, you know, in 10 days. Quite awesome work.
Yeah.
I, of course, said, I want to automate that, because I don't want to do this like every 2 days, spending 45 minutes looking for those files manually. And so, with the age of 11, I actually started my first database where I put in all the guest records myself, 4,000 guests at the time, creating the queries to, you know, create all the output and the birthday letters automatically, that I only need to put them into the paper envelope and bring them to the mail. That's it. That was my entry. It evolved because it turned out that many jobs that I had to do at the front desk, I could automate. So I built a room planner to manage the rooms. I had the guest database already. I started creating an invoicing system where we could create invoices. I had to send all the availability data to our local tourism board, you know, IT system, to actually avoid myself calling in manually on the phone and telling the numbers of available rooms for the next 7 days. So I just coded basically the whole application to save myself a time at the front desk. This was 11, 12, 13 years old. Other hotels in the area got interested, and so at the age of 14, I sold this program for the first time to 2 other hotels in Kaprun. For me, you know, today is, I believe, just 2,000 euros or something, but for me as a 14-year-old, this was huge money.
Yeah.
And at the point, I actually decided that I will actually go into the software world, because somehow this is all clicking for me in my mind from the beginning, and not go into the hotel world as actually being a hotelier, as my father expected me to. He's been angry about this since. Anyhow, so that's how I started, you know, building PMSs. That was back in 89, 90.
Wow.
Obviously, immediately with the rise of the internet in 93, when I started studying, I built the first booking engine in Europe. And I took reservations already, I remember in 96 in January, for the whole area, which is called European Sport Region, Kaprun am See. We already made over 1 million shillings at the time revenue over the booking engine. This was in January 96. And that's how I started. Out of that, I built a channel manager, first called Hobobox, that some older people might remember in Europe, turned into HBSI, still serving over 60,000 hotels today globally. I started primarily working with Las Vegas hotel chains, Mandalay Bay, etc., to work on their distribution, and, you know, really traveled the world from basically 99, 2000, 2001, onwards. That's how I started.
Yeah, yeah.
In the distribution game.
You also were very foundational in companies like Hetris, Snapshot. So lead us through that transition from when you were from those days into the Hetris, Snapshot days, and to where you are now. Talk a little bit about that.
It's a good angle. Didn't think about that myself, because essentially I started Hetris because when I did HBSI, all the distribution setup, I was always angered by the limitations of the PMSs. We had to work with the PMSs, but they have not been enabling. They've never been built for sharing the information, making it available, or enabling anything in distribution, because the PMSs were never built for that.
No.
So I said, I want to build something that's better, because I believe, this was in 2006, that the worlds will go together. There will not be a PMS anymore. There will not be a distribution system anymore, because there's so much data that needs to go around, and all that interfacing produces so much pain that why create two systems in the first place? This is where the cloud came up as well. If you actually have the cloud, you don't need to have the PMS in the property anymore, because why would you in the first place? There's no reason to have that. So if you put it all together in one system, in one platform, and distribute from there, it takes away so much pain and overhead and integration work, and you can actually increase the reliability of the distribution and in consequence also of the service delivery. Funnily enough, that's still what I'm working on today.
Yeah.
Still an unsolved challenge for a large part of the hotel industry.
It's funny you say that, because I was going to say, I mean, you make it sound so easy. Everything you just said in the last 20 seconds, 30 seconds sounds so simple and easy, but yet in reality, it seems as though we've still not really gotten there.
That's right.
Hotels don't necessarily feel comfortable adopting cloud-based solutions yet, 100%. It's been a struggle. So why do you feel that that's the case? What has been the limitation there?
Well, I'm a believer. I'm always believing that we can build something that's better, simpler, and drives us into the future. But in order to go into the future, you need to cut off legacy. And cut off legacy is necessary in terms of cutting off old systems, but also old thinking. And that's as much a human issue or challenge as it is an organizational one.
Yeah.
And the larger the hotel organization becomes, and we still face this today, I still face this in my discussions and workshops that I'm doing today with the larger chains in the world, overcoming this legacy thinking of, okay, we got this stuff at the hotel, what we call a PMS, we got this central reservation systems, we got distribution over in this bucket here. There's some other thing like revenue management, and then we got events management. There's so many things around, and people, I understand, for simplicity, they like to put each of those challenges into its own bucket. And that's fine, and that's how you've been managing stuff for years. Not for years, for decades. So it's really difficult and challenging to get out of that thinking, because in my perspective, the cloud changes everything in that setup. There's no need anymore to have software in a hotel, because that was only required because 30, 40 years ago there was no connectivity. You just had to do the stuff in a hotel because that's where you manage the rooms, where the check-ins and the check-outs. You just had to do it there. Today, you can have everything in the cloud and access it from there centrally. But if you have it in cloud already, why would you have a separate property management system from a CS? Doesn't make sense. All the complexity in there, and today's expectation of providing a better shopping experience for the guest, or a better service delivery, or even going into self-service now with COVID and everything, so that guests can do more stuff on their own devices, is acting counterintuitively against having those separate systems. Doesn't work anymore. So you need to combine it. That said, we fully understand that hotel organizations don't want to put all eggs into one basket. Because if you put everything from hotel management to CEO management, distribution, revenue management, and events management, and all that stuff into one vendor's hands, you make yourself kind of dependent on a vendor. And there have been some negative experiences around that in the past.
Yep.
We want to learn from them as well. That's why we adopt an open strategy to say we want to drive to more simplicity, and simplicity in that regard means you need to reduce the number of systems that drive your hotel business. Not down to one necessarily, but instead of having 11, getting down to 4 would already be a huge leap forward. Think about the connectivity between those 11s. That's like a logistical functions.
Absolutely. So that kind of leads on to my next point that I wanted to cover with you is what considerations and what are the core considerations of properties, standalone, small regional properties or even larger ones, should they look into and consider when it comes to creating a hotel tech stack today? Because, as you said, it could be 4, 10 different systems, but they all need to be integrated to each other. And how do they prioritize those integrations? What, in your opinion, is the best way to approach that?
Very good question, André. I believe hotels need to understand what are the most important USPs towards the guest. And they should invest into enabling those USPs, whether it's guest service, quality, brand, and efficient handling, whatever it might be. Take those USPs that you think your hotel, your brand have, and you need to focus around that. And try to make that experience from guest handling to your staff handling to the actual, end result in the hotel as frictionless as possible. Try to combine this into one central system. There might be other, what I always call helper systems on the side to get stuff done in other areas. But focus on your USPs and try to invest there, but minimize the number of systems. If you need to actually provide or handle different vendors, you need to think about where to split it. I believe the past approach to splitting is this is in the hotel, this is here, this is there, is not appropriate anymore because we're not talking about geography anymore, really. It's all in the cloud, so you rather need to separate by function. Say, okay, this is all my software that deals with hotel bedrooms, for example. This is my software that deals with meeting and events, for example. But whether it's distribution of hotel rooms, the fulfillment of hotel rooms, or the hotel operations requirements for housekeeping and financial reporting, whatever, that should come out of the same stack. Because then you minimize friction by having interfaces that actually impact the operations if something doesn't work that well. And with every interface you have in the queue somewhere, it limits your ability to serve the guest better or make your staff more efficient or work better. That's what I believe in. And that's what I've been kind of trying to work on since Headfirst, to combine many of those functions. Understanding revenue management is perfect as a helper function because it does its job and you can select the best out of the different vendors that are out there. And to interface that is quite straightforward. And even if this interface is down for half an hour, it's not really impacting your operations. So that's a great way to kind of separate systems.
Okay, cool. Last question before we wrap it up. Leadership. I'd like to get your take on what is modern leadership today. So if I was to ask you in one sentence, how would you define modern leadership or a modern leader? What would you say?
That's a tough one.
Yeah, I know, I'm sorry.
That's a tough one. That's fine. I would say leadership in terms of, leadership actually applies towards employees, but also towards customers or guests in terms of the hotel industry. So you need to live and breathe something that you believe in. You need to be excited by getting something done, by overcoming challenges and hurdles, by doing what you do. You need to define yourself by what you want to achieve. If you take a lead in that regard, like you running ahead and you try to pull away the big rocks to make your story a success, then the people will follow you, because even if the objective might be minor, it's an objective and we can make something happen, we can make something better or easier or cheaper or whatever it is, and then people will follow you. And then you just need to stay true to yourself and to some, how should I say, base human needs for empathy, for employees, and also for guests and partners to treat them humanly. And in German, there's a good word, es menschelt. And this is what's necessary to bring it back down on the ground and make people feel being part of that community to achieve something.
Very good. All right, Michael, thanks so much for joining us. It's great to see you
André.
again.
Thank you.
And for taking 20 minutes with us today. It's been wonderful.
Pleasure.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks very much.